Dear experts and guests, I'm delighted to see you in our event, How to Privatize State-Owned Companies in Ukraine. We are happy that more than 170 companies from all around the world, of course, mostly Dutch and Ukrainian, registered to this event. First of all, thank you for your interest in Ukrainian economy. I hope in the course of discussion, you will receive necessary information to make up your mind to invest into Ukraine. My name is Irina Papusha, and I will be moderating our meeting. Couple of words about myself. I'm Ukrainian, and I've been living about 2 years in the Netherlands. I work as a non-executive director in boards, and at the same time, I coordinate economic affairs in OpenDoorUkraine, Netherlands, and I'm representative of Chamber of Commerce of Ukraine in the Netherlands. Let me say some grateful words to the organizers. This event is held by OpenDoorUkraine, Netherlands, and its chairman, Robert Seri, by the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and its president, Gennady Chizhikov. The event supported by the Ukrainian Embassy in the Netherlands and Ambassador Vsevolod Chentsov himself, and by one of the leading Ukrainian law firm, Arzinger, and the best Ukrainian event agency, Arena CS. We will talk today about opportunities to buy Ukrainian state-owned companies, and you will get to know how to do it from the main person in Ukraine who is responsible for that, Dmitry Sinichenko, head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. Dmitry, we are supposed to see your face. Exactly, Dmitry, we are waiting for you. By Tibur Bondarev, the founder and managing partner of the law firm Arzinger, you will receive presentation of legal issue of Ukrainian privatization. And I would like to introduce our special guests who are ready to answer your question in written and vocal form. For today, we have Franz Lavoy, Dutch businessman, shareholder and partner of Ukrainian company Galka in Lviv, and many other companies in EU. Helen Over de Linden, the head of the Eastern Europe and Central Asia table of the Royal Industrial Group Club. Andres Sterk, by the way, I don't see him, but I hope he will attend. Andres Sterk, the international business advisor by the Dutch Chamber of Commerce, and Lana Sinichkina, partner, attorney at law at Arzinger Law Firm. Before we start, let me guide you a little bit through interactive possibilities of our conference. All of you, from the very beginning, can write questions in Q&A section of Zoom. You can see it in the bottom of the screen, and immediately receive written answer from our speakers and special guests. For networking with all participants, please use Zoom chat. After the presentation of speakers, we can unmute your microphones to ask some questions. So raise your hand to indicate your intention. This option is available at the part of Zoom which named participants. So let's start. I would like to give the floor to our honorable representatives. Vsevolod Chentsov, the ambassador of Ukraine in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Please, Vsevolod.
Thank you very much, Irina, and good afternoon or good time of the day if you are joining us from different time zone. Thank you very much for, first of all, for organizing this event, and my appreciation goes to OpenDoorUkraine Netherlands and to Royal Industrial Club. We planned this event as a normal conference to be held here in the Netherlands, and I'm really glad that we managed to start at least with this online gathering to follow up when it is possible offline. Definitely, I appreciate your interest and that you opted to join this event, notwithstanding dramatic developments over the ocean. So it shows the serious interest in Ukrainian privatization process. On a more serious note, I would like to stress that we as an embassy would like to diversify business activities, both for the Dutch and Ukrainian companies. We have a growing trade over, and we are very effective in the field of agriculture, agri-tech, but we as an embassy would like to promote more value-added businesses, both in the Netherlands and in Ukraine, to have more investment into production and services, all possible business activities. And we have more and more solid prerequisites for such diversification. We have a very strong legal basis, which is free trade zone and association agreement between Ukraine and the EU. And I'm happy that Dutch businesses and Ukrainian businesses very effectively utilizing those new opportunities. In Ukraine, we have created a strong infrastructure to support investment and different business activities. And I mean organizations like Ukrinvest, Export Promotion Office, present here, Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, renewed Council of Exporters and Investors under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and definitely Ukrainian embassies abroad, which are in your disposal. Also, in Ukraine, we managed to move forward in difficult and systemic reforms like justice reform, decentralization, anti-corruption, institution building. Yes, we are on the middle of our way, but we have already successful results. So today, Netherlands is #2 investor in the Ukrainian economy. So with more than 10 billion euros, if we are talking about the overall volumes. But I think we have a great potential to double and triple those figures. And there is a strong support on the governmental level from both sides. So I'm really happy that Franz Lavoy, a veteran investor, is present here. And I think he can share interesting insights how he managed to develop his business. And I appreciate this spirit of pioneering Dutch companies, which dare to enter sometimes difficult waters of Ukrainian business. So I hope it will be more and more stable to invest and do business in Ukraine. And you have good partners like state investment, state property fund, institutions, which I mentioned, Ukrainian companies, which can help you to streamline this process and build successful business in Ukraine. So I wish a very interesting and encouraging discussion today. So I hope there will be a lot of questions which will need to be answered both by our partners, law firm Arzinger, and experts. And as I said, we as an embassy, we are in your disposal to help you, to guide you in this process. Thank you very much, and wish you good day.
Thank you, Vsela. Thank you so much. And now I invite Robert Seri, the chairman of OpenDoorUkraine Netherlands, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Irina. Let me begin with acknowledging and thanking all our partners. You have been mentioning them already. Irina. Without them, we couldn't have been doing this. I'm not going to mention them again, but I'm very happy that we are able, as Open Door Ukraine, now to finally have this activity, which Vsevolod, the ambassador, already has said we would, of course, have appreciated and much more liked to do at the Industriële Club, in terms also of launching one of our first economic activities. I think that as chairman of ODU, let me just briefly explain a little bit what ODU is about, what Open Door Ukraine is about. Because so to say, we are actually a new kid on the block, and we also still have to prove ourselves, and we are very much also aware of that. But this initiative was started last year, and together also with Joris Voorhoeven, well known in the Netherlands as a former minister for defense in the Netherlands also, we felt that there was a need to establish a kind of a network organization. That is basically what we are trying to do. It is not about one open door, it is about open doors in the plural. And you see it with Irina now leading and coordinating our economic activities, but we are wider than only economic activities. In fact, we work with 3 tables. Now this is the economic table, but we also have a humanitarian table, which intends to support and facilitate communities in Ukraine, and of course, in particular, also victims of the conflict in the east of the country. This is something, as an ambassador, I had the privilege to be the first ambassador to newly independent Ukraine. I know this has been starting from the beginning, and I'm very happy also that we have this also as part of our platform to actually connect also the different platforms with each other. The third one is the cultural table. Not only the cultural table, it is more cultural and civil society. We are still developing that table. As you will all understand, we are also affected by the pandemic now. But really the idea is to have an interactive kind of network consisting of these 3 tables, which could help the 2 countries to have even better relations than we actually have been having right from the beginning. I also remember that as the first ambassador to Ukraine, our economic contacts from the beginning were important. Let me just mention one other aspect of it. The international financial institutions, the close cooperation between the Netherlands and Ukraine in the World Bank and the IMF, as Ukraine is part also of the so-called Dutch constituencies in these important financial institutions. So here again, I feel there is a lot we can do. I wish to also mention here also one partner, if I may, Arzinger. Thank you also for all the cooperation. They are our main partner also in this, in what we are trying to do now. And I wish also to thank our sponsors, by the way, because without some sponsors, it is very difficult to do this work. And of course, it will also not be easy to continue to do work without some sponsorships. But here again, we wish to also prove to you that we can make a difference, that we can have some added value. And in that sense, I am looking very much forward to this conference about privatization in Ukraine, the process of privatization. We know many things are still difficult in Ukraine, but that's precisely why we need to know from each other and have contacts. And here again, I'm also so much happy to see Frans Lavoie as another nester of Dutch economic ties with Ukraine, who will be also contributing to this conference. So without much further ado, Irina, over to you. Thank you very much in your capacity as coordinator of the economic table that you have been able to pull this one off for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert, for your great speech. And if you mention Arzinger, I would like to say that law firm Arzinger are ready to spend 3 hours for free for each problem Dutch businessmen want to resolve according to doing business in Ukraine. So send your request to Open Door Ukraine Netherlands. We connect you with Arzinger and you will receive answers for all your law questions. Thank you. And we would like to hear several words from Gennady Chizhikov, the president of Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Gennady, please, your word.
Thank you, Irina. Hello, everybody. Best wishes from Kiev. In Kiev is weather quite good. Special weather for talking about this so serious talking like privatization. Thank you very much. First of all, Irina. Irina is our representative in Netherlands, and now I am quiet. It's everything is in the hands of the very serious person. Everything will be good. Thank you very much, Vsevolod Chertsov, our ambassador, who always ready to support business. And I also would like to mention that we have a very good team today. If somebody would like to know what's really around the privatization, today we have two fantastic speakers, Mr. Senichenko. I know him many years. He one of the best person who knows everything about this process, and the Timur Bondarev, who working internationally and can translate sometimes our laws to the laws to understanding our foreigners. That's why I'm very quiet and very serious about today's event. Chamber of Commerce, Ukraine Chamber of Commerce. If you don't know somebody in Kiev or in Ukraine, please call in our doors. Ukraine has 72 offices in all Ukraine. Every region we have offices. We have 55 representative offices abroad. That's why we promote our organization like organization of first point, first meeting. We have thousands of members, such type of like Arzinger and other companies who are always ready to support you in some concrete points, but anyway, Chamber of Commerce is nearby you. Today event is very important for us. As you know, our president, Mr. Zelensky, many times stated that attracting foreign investment, direct investment, is one of the most important tasks for economic of development of Ukraine. That's why this is very serious. Now we in the process of the adopting of the new law. This law, I think Timur will speak about this. This law gives more chances to feel free, to be comfortable in our country for companies who would like to invest in our country. Next one, the Kingdom of Netherlands is one of the most interesting countries for Ukraine. Ukrainian feels very positive to the Dutch. This is very important, and Ukrainian would like to work with the Dutch businesses. And the example of the French Lavoie, who I know him many years, demonstrated it's not easy sometimes, but everything is possible. It's possible to make business in Ukraine, to invest in Ukraine. Netherlands is interesting destination and for Ukrainian investment as well, but we today will speak about another way. We are waiting investment from your lovely country. I would like to finish just to say what Chamber of Commerce, Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, if you need any questions, please, you can find Irina Papusha in your lovely country. If you needed to find the Chamber of Commerce in Ukraine, every region, you can find Chamber of Commerce. Don't hesitate to contact with me, with my office, if you have any question, if you have any desire to know something more after our fantastic event. Thank you very much, Irina, and for everybody. Thank you very much, and welcome to Kiev, welcome to Ukraine. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Gennady. So I think it's time to move on to our presentation, and I would like to give a floor to our main speaker, main person in Ukraine, who is first responsible for all privatization, Dmitry Senichenko, head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. Dmitry, please, your word.
Thank you, Irina. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here with you. As Gennady said correctly, the Ukrainians historically has a good feeling towards Dutch people and vice versa. Since I remember I worked in the National Bank, we always liked statistics, and we saw that after Cyprus, Netherlands is one of the top investors in Ukraine, was for many, many years in a row. So that's why even during this pandemic, coronavirus crisis, I'm glad that we met. And I'm sure that nothing will change our plans to work closely. Here in the State Property Fund, as our chairman Irina said, we are the main people to execute political will. So, but the political will for the privatization, for the openness, for the investments is really present. It's already 1 year since I am in the position of head of State Property Fund, and the previous Prime Minister and the current Prime Minister are dedicated to the policy of privatization. President Zelensky is also showing by his own case by transferring the assets under the office of president to the privatization to have more investors. The role of the State Property Fund is to change the way that privatization is conducted, to be more client-oriented, to prepare the investment menu for everybody's taste. And about this, I will give you a small presentation and will be happy to answer the further questions after this. Okay, the mission of State Property Fund is really restore trust and institution. We agreed at the very beginning that it's not the main goal of privatization to get as much as more possible revenue from the privatization, but indeed to attract investment, to transfer extra non-core assets to the private sector. And these investments will build further working places, base for taxation, and so on and so forth. We have in the State Property Fund also regulating the valuation appraisal market. So we are doing reform of appraisal together with the World Bank. By the end of the year, hope we will submit the law to the parliament. Also, and this year, the state property lease was introduced in a more transparent way, only through the electronic platforms, Prozora. And the policy that we are realizing is saying that for the moment, Ukraine probably one of the last countries is in Europe that didn't finish the massive privatization. We still have more than 3,600 state-owned enterprises. I can tell you honestly that maybe 1/3 of them should be just liquidated, but this is still enormous amount of state-owned companies which belong to the state. Even worse, the management of these companies is conducted in the poor corporate rules, and it's managed by 96 different state-owned bodies. This leads to the situation when every fifth company is a loss-making, and it creates more and more problems and losses to the state budget. During the years when the populists said that it's not the time to privatize, they will come and buy our land, they will come and take our assets. So now we are having the policy to push the privatization forward. Having this policy backing us, we have, as a State Property Fund, received for privatization 700 companies from the government. They are very different type, small, medium size. Some of them should be really liquidated. Some of them are very interesting. And our task is to prepare them for the auctions, to make them transparent and understandable for international or local investor. That's why we completely changed the process of privatization. Now we have online website, privatization.gov.ua. Many parts of it already translated into English, the rest will be translated. So these documents we are getting preparing with audits, we are getting the inventory, Then we are creating the teasers. Then on the website, when it's coming closer to the auctions, there is a virtual data room where everybody can download and see what are the problems and what are the positive sides of these assets, then have physical access, and then auction. During this year, even though many populists were in the parliament, they're still saying that it's not the time to do the privatization, we showed that comparative with the previous year, you can see now on the screen, that the auction results, the average number of participants, price growth, and number of auctions are exceeding the previous so-called better economically year. So for me, it's the most important figures here is average number of participants, because this is what I said from the very beginning. We are building the trust. We have to show by very practical cases that now it's not something under the table, that not only selected people could know what is inside, what is on sale. Now everybody can see everything, and that brings to the increase of number of participants, and the price is then getting the market price. We have introduced in our institution, we are still civil servants, but as I said, we're trying to be more client-oriented. We have introduced the special investor relations office, where we have 2 people who can answer any questions about the procedures, about the plans. We have already a lot of inquiries from various countries, helping investors from abroad understand how to invest, how to take part in the privatization auctions. So we are making this easy, understandable, more accountable, and our investor relations office is ready to help the investors from the Kingdom of Netherlands. In the Ukrainian legislation, the law on privatization, which is not so bad, we are improving it, but still this law was adopted in 2018. We have so-called small-scale privatization and so-called large-scale privatization. The grade is between the starting price, the book value, so the asset which has less book value than 7.5 million euro. It's called small privatization. There are very different assets, from unfinished construction, real estate, property complexes, etc., etc. But and you can take part even from abroad, taking part in the auction on the internet, electronic auction, and you can buy anything on this small-scale privatization. So our job as a state property fund to disclose information in a better way. So financial due diligence, technical, tax, etc. you will find on the virtual data room on our website, privatization.gov.ua. Large-scale privatization is more about the big property complexes or shares of state companies. It has more complicated preparation procedure. It takes between probably 9 and 11 months. Big privatization is done with the support of specific advisors. These are investment banks, Big Four and others, who are preparing these assets for the further auction and do the specific targeted marketing in the professional audiences of specific investors. This is on the screen. You can see now only a few steps how to take part in the privatization. Again, starting from the website, then analyzing, then passing. So our investment relations office will be ready to help, to explain more, to give detailed information about the process, and it's indeed not so difficult anymore. In previous times, it was everything published in the newspapers in Ukrainian. Newspaper was published only 400 pieces. Now we have the internet supermarket. This is what we have for the moment, the list of small-scale privatization in our portfolio currently. And during the previous 15 years, there were like 83 companies transferred to the state property fund from the government. Now, during the last 8 months, we received about 800 companies, 800 assets for the privatization, which is, you can compare, showing the big political will. Not all of them are really attractive, AAA or blue chips. A lot of them are distressed assets, even though every asset has its potential investor. These are the examples of the assets on sale. They are very different, starting from the, probably you heard the Hotel Dnieper. We sold it, it was on the European Square. Actually, this was transferred from the Office of President. Maybe not all of you can understand how it may happen, but I will repeat, 96 state-owned bodies are managing 3,600 state-owned enterprises, including Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Energy, agencies, committees, and this hotel was managed by the Office of President. The President Zelensky said, I am not going to be the manager of the hotel and hospitality. He transferred it to the State Property Fund. We prepared the documents, all necessary due diligence. We had 29 potential bidders, and the final price was 33 million euro. Another example is Kiev Bus Service. It's a transport company that owns a set of bus stations. It was sold also in the middle of this year, in summer, as far as I remember. And they're planning to invest now 2 million euro in central bus station, and they're doing turnaround of this company. So again, I managed, I believe, to convince majority of decision makers that the main goal, the main policy of the privatization is not getting as the highest price for a maximum revenue to the budget, is actually transfer these non-core assets to the private owner, and only then the new life for those assets is going to begin. So nowadays we have started the massive privatization of distillery industry. Ukraine and Belarus were the last countries where we had the state-owned monopoly for the alcohol production, and now it's not anymore. Ukrainian spirit owning more than 70 distilleries. We have already conducted first 6 auctions, and during the next months, by mid of next year, there will be a few auctions every week or every month, several. The law says that if you buy one of the state-owned distilleries, then by the end of the next summer, you will have the exclusivity to produce anything from the spirit. So it's not the only vodka. We are advocating this and looking for investors who are working with food, alcohol industry, bioethanol, technical denaturated ethyl alcohol, etc., etc. So there is plenty of opportunities, not only to produce vodka, because as you know very well, Ukraine is very good agro-developed company, and having this processing at the territory of Ukraine can be a good benefit for the investor. So you are welcome. We just started this demonopolization of the spirits. With regard to large-scale privatization, we have for the moment in the list 22 assets for large-scale privatization. We are now fighting with the parliament to convince that it's time to privatize everything. You should not forget, you should not afraid, because 29 years communists told us and some populists that it's not the time, we are in the crisis, the better time will come, that the price will be higher. No, we have to deblock this privatization because it's never the best time. We have big interest from various international and local investors, and there are money in the air. The money in the world were printed, as you know, to fight with the coronavirus pandemic and economic crisis. So the money are looking for the better location. We are preparing now for the privatization several big assets. One of them is the United Mining and Chemical Company. We are completing with advisors BDO and Baker Tilly and Baker McKinsey the investment memorandum, and probably beginning of the year, maybe end of this year, this will be marketed and then auction the first quarter of the year 2021. We just hired the advisor KPMG in consortium with BDO and Cushman, who are doing due diligence of the big development area in the very downtown in Kiev. This used to be the old plant, which is not working anymore as a real plant, but it's a huge territory for the development, mixed use, I may guess. So this will be an auction first half of the year 2021. Odessa port plant, there were several attempts to privatize it. It's heavily indebted, but we are still preparing it for the auction next quarter, third quarter next year. Heavy machinery building, Elektrovazhmash, and some other companies we have. As you know, Ukraine is rich with its like human capital and also technologically innovative nature nations. That's why we'll be looking for the investors to give the new life for technological and machinery building companies. There will be the big sale on the last 6 regional distribution electricity companies, Oblenergo. This year, the National Committee for Regulation of Electricity Market adopted the RAB tariffs that gives the premium for the new transition lines. The new laws were adopted. So these 6 electricity generating companies, they are the last that belongs to the state. We will be hiring now international advisors and preparing them for the privatization next year. Even in the IMF program that we have, there is a specific clause related to the privatization. And of course, now we had COVID crisis, but we need your voice, the voice of the business, to send the signal to members of parliament, to the politicians, that guys, we are ready to consider. Don't promise too much, but we need the voice of the business to support our efforts, saying that, guys, finally, you're always saying that Ukraine has a very brilliant geopolitical location. Ukraine has the natural resources. Ukraine has a human capital. Ukraine still has some transport infrastructure. We are ready to invest. We are ready to at least to consider. Please show your investment menu and keep going the privatization policy, because sometimes it's difficult in the parliament, because parliamentarians saying that, you know, there is a coronavirus, nobody is interested in Ukraine. We have to prove the different. I will also inform you that we prepared the new law, which we will submit next month, that will actually give the new speed for the privatization, because there are still enormous amount of companies and standing alone assets belong to the state, and to free them, to put them on the market, we need indeed some legal changes in the legislation to give more comfort and more transparency for the privatization process. Also, there are a lot of legal changes that give comfort for the investors, including the law of England and Wales to be applied for the privatized assets to protect rights and interests of potential investors, etc., etc., etc. So we are now working on lobbying this law. We would appreciate very much the voice of business to support it in any form. With regard to the privatization, I'm done. I'm happy to answer your questions, and I'm here with you. Thank you very much for the attention.
Yeah, Dmitry, thank you very much for your informative and valuable speech. We will have a lot of questions a little bit later after second presentation, but I ask you to tell to all attendances now how they can contact Property Fund of Ukraine via website, or you will give any special contacts for them?
I will write in the chat the email of our investment relations office. Emails and telephones.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And I see that in our chat, we have fantastic communication, even with anecdote. And one more option, I see that, yeah, one of objects for privatization, one company already announced their fantastic financial figures. So I like the chat, really. So thank you so much. Next presentation will be delivered by Timur Bondarev, founding partner and managing partner of law firm Arzinger. Timur, your floor, please.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you, Dmitry, very much for your great introduction. It's actually not so much for me to tell, but I will anyway allow me to share my professional and practical experience in the area of privatization. And let me hold on. I will share the presentation. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. So. Very good. Do you oops.
Timur, if any problem with presentation, we can download from organizer. Is it okay?
No, that's it. Do you see the presentation now?
Yes. All good.
Very good. Okay. So again, Dmitry has already told a lot of interesting issues with regard to the privatization, and for me, I'm especially pleased to have heard this, because actually my professional career has started somewhere like about 23 or 25 years ago in the state privatization agency, State Property Fund of Ukraine. And I actually remember the State Property Fund of Ukraine in this old edition, so to say, and I'm very pleased to see actually this new, totally launched agency, and I can definitely say that a lot has changed. As you have already understood from Dmitry's presentation, the agency works in a very transparent manner, and the most important thesis, I think, is that the privatization, there is a political will to make a privatization. And why it's so important to make this emphasis, because a lot of people from European countries, from Asia, from US, they don't even understand, they cannot even imagine that the state can be owner of such valuable assets, because in majority economies, the market economy has been around for many years, and the major assets are just already privately owned. But Ukraine still belongs to one of the so-called state capitalists. So we have inherited very unique assets from various industries. And here is on this slide, you will see just some industries which still in the public hand, and which will be privatized according to the government of Ukraine. So we'll find here cogeneration, alcohol manufacturing, what Dmitry has mentioned, the success story hospitality, the Hotel Dnipro just in the heart of Kiev, which was sold to an investor like 2 months ago, pharmaceutical, energy production, infrastructure, HoReCa, electricity transmission, agriculture. So all across these sectors, you will find very interesting, very sexy assets which are about to change the hands. Just highlights again what we wanted to make focus on for foreign investors. Obviously, is that foreign investors are eligible, local presence not required. So that means that all foreign investors have equal access to the privatization. One very important note: Ukraine doesn't have foreign investment screening regime as you guys have it in Europe or in US. There are discussions that Ukraine should introduce foreign investment screening, and there is even the draft law, but it is not in place yet, which makes actually the only regulatory approval which you should seek for while considering privatization would be anti-monopoly agency. I will talk about it a bit later. So no foreign investment screening. Potential buyers can initiate privatization of an object. That means that even if you don't find your asset of your interest on the list of the assets which are about to privatize, you can initiate it actually, because there are really a lot of state-owned companies, and you can initiate if you're interested, and this initiative can be then supported. Transparent auctions, including Prozor sale for small privatization, large privatization. It's a very special topic, but what is very important for foreign investors is that the SPA can be governed by UK law, and actually the arbitration clause can be inserted in the SPA, which is really big development, because I can remember many years ago when I was working in the agency, there was a big scandal against. I mean, I was sort of punished by my supervisor because I have allowed myself to include the arbitration clause into an agreement with a major foreign investor, actually. So there was even an internal investigation against my personality, that I actually was brave enough to offer arbitration clause to a foreign investor. So it was not possible actually by then. The only opportunity for dispute resolution was just Ukrainian courts, and unfortunately the reputation of Ukrainian courts is sort of not so good to actually attract the foreign investors. Dutch auctions for slow selling privatization assets, so that means the assets which are not being sold rapidly, then there can be the decline in price procedure, and due diligence and is possible, obviously, and negotiable agreement for large privatization. So that means that the virtual data room can be made available. Again, who can be a buyer? A very important topic. As I mentioned already, Ukrainian foreign companies and individuals are actually eligible for privatization. There are obviously some issues which should be considered and some exceptions. So the companies registered in offshore jurisdictions with non-disclosed UBOs. It's very, the world has changed dramatically, and you definitely know that even to open the bank account now, you have to produce a lot of documents with regard to the UBOs, and the same works for establishment of the company. So this is a very, very usual requirement. Companies having UBOs from Russian Federation, it's not a secret that there are some tensions between Ukraine and Russia, and therefore the companies which have majority stakes from Russian Federation, they would not be entitled to privatize Ukrainian state-owned assets. Companies with non-disclosed UBOs, companies registered in the FATF blacklisted states, sanctioned persons, and parties who are already blacklisted by the State Property Fund of Ukraine. That means that they privatized the assets in the past, but for some reasons the agreements with them were terminated because they didn't fulfill their obligations with regard to the state. So what we should consider while for foreign companies to participate, there is no need to establish a local company, obviously, no need to open a local bank account, so you can pay in foreign currency. This is very important because, again, many years ago, it was necessary to pay only in the Ukrainian currency, and some companies actually, even after winning the bid, they failed to get the asset because there were issues with transferring money to Ukraine, exchanging the money according to the exchange rate of National Bank of Ukraine. And if you send not so much money in Ukraine, for instance, and the exchange rate has changed in the meanwhile, technically you are not entitled to, you cannot fulfill your obligation. So now, no problem, you can pay in foreign currency. Documents from foreigners require notarization, obviously, and apostillization. So that means that you should be prepared well in advance so that you don't do it in last minute. UBOs must be properly disclosed and do not come from Russian Federation, as I mentioned already. There should be an authorized person on the ground to be able to negotiate with the agency and to sign the documents on behalf of the investor, because there are clear requirements. When do you have to sign the documents, the protocol, the minutes of the Privatization Commission within 3 days after the auction has taken place, and therefore it's very important that somebody is on the ground in Ukraine, properly authorized again. So Dmitry has already told about the types of privatization, so-called. There is a large privatization, small privatization. So small privatization are major, some real estate assets, smaller companies, and the large privatization are so-called national champions, blue chips, shares on territorial property complexes of the companies in the value of exceeding 250 million hryvnia. The auctions should be held by the State Property Fund in Ukraine. SPA can be governed by UK law, and disputes are arbitrable, as I have already mentioned. The only thing which you have to consider, Dmitry has mentioned it, that these auctions are now put on hold due to the COVID situation, but the preparation are ongoing. So that means that these assets are being prepared for privatization because they have actually a long history. Dmitry has mentioned some of them, and it takes a lot of time to really make them marketable. And the investment advisory companies have been chosen, and they are working hard on making these companies really attractive and these transactions bankable. And small privatization, respective auctions are held through this Prozoro system. Prozoro is actually a unique online system which was developed by Ukrainians, and which has already collected a lot of positive remarks from all over the world, because apparently this is the most transparent system which allows to sell and to buy something. So all public procurements are done through this platform. So it's really transparent, and it doesn't allow like third party to to involve and to somehow interrupt the auction. So it's really excellent stuff. This small privatization is done in a very straightforward manner, very streamlined. There is no investment advisory, no virtual database for due diligence, but actually the information can be accessed due to the public sources relatively easily. Disclosure, obviously very important topic for everybody, because again, I always compare old privatization, new privatization. In the old times, it was literally impossible to get reliable information with regard to the target. Now, State Property Fund of Ukraine works very hard to make it as really like an investment bank. As Dmitry said, it's privatization supermarket. Virtual data rooms is to be established by investment advisor for the large privatization assets. Receipt of information on the company's activity will be able, site visits will be able also, and interviews with the employees. So actually it's now privatization in Ukraine is done as the best practices M&A transactions, where you can really assess the asset, you can evaluate everything, you can interview the people to better understand and to find out potential skeletons in the closet. Small privatization, virtual data rooms only for the most attractive assets, which really require the data room, and due diligence is mostly often based on the publicly available sources. However, having said this, the process has just started, and I understand that State Property Fund of Ukraine is really very helpful here and would be happy to provide information with regard to the asset, subject to respective requests. License and regulatory approvals, very important topic. So generally for the transaction, as I mentioned already, only merger clearance is required. If transaction qualifies for merger clearance, no foreign investment screening. Again, very important. So far, perhaps the situation will change, but so far, no foreign investment screening. For the business activity, essentially, if it's a share deal, if the company is bought, if the shares of the company are sold during the privatization process, so the licenses and all these important work permits, subsoil rights, etc., they normally inherited. If there is an asset deal, if the respective property is sold, normally subsoil use permits, environmental permits, they should be reapplied, they should be renewed for the new owner. These should be considered, and in practice, land title documents also should be newly reissued, because in Ukraine, in some situations, it's necessary to reissue land title documents, but it's actually very technical process. This is the slide with regard to merger control. I have mentioned it already at least 2 or 3 times. Ukraine has a very, very low thresholds. That means that almost each and every major transaction should be notified with the Ukrainian agency, and not only Ukrainian transactions, but also foreign to foreign transactions sometimes. So if your company is based in Ukraine, does some turnover or has some assets, and you do an M&A transaction outside of Ukraine, your advisor should look very carefully into Ukrainian merger control requirements, because based on Ukrainian law, as you see here, there are two tests. Your transaction can be caught also in Ukraine, but for privatization, obviously, if your transaction qualifies and if your company qualifies for these thresholds, they are relatively small again. You should go through the merger control proceedings. And this is very important topic, because sometimes what we've had already in the practice, where even if the client has successfully accomplished privatization process, so they are announced as a bidder, but they can have some troubles with the Ukrainian antitrust agency because they did not think about it or they didn't prepare documents. So think about it very well in advance. The agency, the Ukrainian Antitrust Agency and State Property Fund of Ukraine have very, very smooth smooth cooperation. They really do help each other, but actually there is quite a huge workload of your homework which you should do to produce proper documents with regard to the UBO, with regard to the financing, etc. This should be done well in advance. So please, your advisor should think about it carefully before you actually approach the privatization auction. Privatization terms, there is a template agreement which is used for privatization. The 30 days from the moment of when you sign the agreement, you should pay the price. Post-privatization obligations may apply sometimes, so that means that employees should be kept, debt repayment, keeping the company's profile, environment protection, investment amount, energy effective modernization, but it's normally established at the very outset of the privatization process. So it's not like a black box. It's not like you buy the company and then you see, wow, I have to fulfill these obligations. No. So you know them well in advance. So in the terms of privatization of respective assets, it's clearly stated that these are sort of conditions precedent, post-closing conditions which have to be fulfilled. So it's like open book for you, and you will be able from the very beginning evaluate whether they are applicable or not, whether it works for you, whether it's interesting for you to go for this asset subject to these terms. Again, payments can be made in each and every convertible currency, and unless no privatization, other post-privatization obligations apply, employees cannot be dismissed for 6 months. But again, normally it works for the large-scale privatization. For small privatization, when you buy just a property, real estate, normally these obligation would not apply. And yeah, the most frequent omissions, yes, raised during privatization. I have mentioned some of them already, but again, ultimately preparation of basic documents. It's very important to make a homework at the very outset of privatization process, because Ukraine has dramatically streamlined everything, but there is still some bureaucracy which you should think of, and there are no dramatical issues, but still some proper documents should be produced in a proper form. So please think about it carefully. Ultimately, registration with e-trading platforms, Prozora I mentioned, it's just state-of-the-art platform, is really great, but you just have to do your homework. You just have to register yourself. It takes time sometimes. So just investigate it properly beforehand. There is nothing complicated, but just it takes time. Then very important topic is unreadiness of the bidder, of the buyer, to provide proper documents to prove where the funds come from, the financing, because according to obviously State Property Fund of Ukraine and the anti-monopoly agency, they consider, they have to understand where from does the money come from. And actually the financing, the facility is also considered by the Ukrainian antitrust agency, and not only by Ukrainian, but the antitrust agencies of the world, as a controlling tool. So that means that the agency would like to know where does the money come from, and you have to be prepared to answer these questions. Who is the lender? Where does the money come? So that this answer is pretty clear. And again, merger control, I mentioned already, because there are a lot of documents to be produced, even if, again, the privatization transactions are very streamlined. There is a great cooperation between State Property Fund of Ukraine and anti-monopoly agency. But please do your homework, especially if you're talking about the blue chip, about the national champions. The agency will be entitled to ask a lot of questions with regard to the markets, with regard to competitors, with regard to the UBOs. You have to be able to answer them, and please do your homework well in advance. And the last but not least, just tips, summary what you have to know to be prepared for privatization. Again, stay informed about the small and large privatization objects. Again, Dmitry and his team, they do great work here. And the website of the SPFU is a real privatization supermarket. You will find a lot of information there. They're improving it almost every day. So it's getting better and better. So therefore, just keep visiting the web page. Follow up on the object status and prepare basic documents, because you can find yourself in a situation when you just go to the website today, there is, I mean, not so much information. Day after tomorrow, there is much more information with regard to the asset. Don't forget to conduct an express legal due diligence with regard to the asset, even if it's a small privatization and there is not so much information on the website of the SPFU. You can still find a lot of information in the publicly available sources. We as lawyers have access to a lot of databases, and we can find quite a number of information which is useful with regard to the litigations, insolvencies, tax debts, titles to the properties, to the land. You will be able to get quite a nice picture, but we would need also time for it. So just allow the time for this due diligence. Develop a detailed action plan of your participation, including financing, bank guarantees, etc. It's very important. Register on a platform providing access to Prozoro sale. Check it if transaction is subject to merger control in Ukraine again, and do your homework well in advance to be able to face the issues with the agency. Be prepared for the filing and apply for privatization when the announcement of the auction is published. This is it from my side. It's just a little bit propaganda about Arzinger, what we are, what we've been doing. Actually, we've been around for almost 20 years. And yeah, here's my personality. I'm managing partner, I'm head of property, and I do privatization here. Happy to answer your questions. Irina, I don't hear you.
And now, hear me? Yeah.
Yes, now I hear.
Yeah, I said thank you so much for content-rich presentation, and I ask you, Timur and Lana, please put your contact and contact for Arzinger, how people can reach you with all questions and with that consultation I already mentioned. And Timur, I have already one question to you. Is it necessary for foreign companies to have local companies or partners or intermediators or advisor to buy state-owned company in Ukraine?
So actually, as I mentioned already, the law doesn't oblige you to create a legal entity to own the asset in Ukraine. So you can buy directly from the country which you choose.
Is it easy for foreigners?
Yeah, it's quite easy. It's okay. Again, for some practical reasons, perhaps you would require a local management company which would take care of the management issues, etc. But generally, again, direct investment can be done. And even in terms of the foreign investment protection, if you do the direct investment from outside of Ukraine, and to take advantage of the double investment protection treaty between Ukraine and the country of the investor, it's very practical. And we've seen a number of cases in the past where our clients invested directly. There are issues actually with the property when you buy the property, because there are some conditions, especially with regard to the land assets. For instance, that there are some restrictions which you should consider for foreigners acquiring the land, non-agricultural land. So therefore, you might be required to have a local legal entity. But if you privatize the big company in Ukraine, you buy the shares of a major blue chip, you don't have to have a legal entity in Ukraine.
No, it's clear, but do you have any recommendation about it?
It's case by case. If you buy a property, if it's small privatization, and if you buy a property, you buy, I don't know, like alcohol plant, which you sold like an asset deal, an asset with underlying land plot. In this case, I would strongly advise to create a local legal entity, at least at the latest stage, because again, there are some issues with regard to the land owning requirements. If you lease the land, it's not a problem again. But again, for practical reasons, so land can be leased also by foreign director. But for practical reasons, for tax purpose, etc., it's still, if you all buy and own and operate a property in Ukraine, it's strongly advisable to have a local legal entity which holds this asset. But again, from the investment protection angle, you can also structure it in a way when your investment flows directly into this, subsidiary in Ukraine, and these companies covered by a respective double investment treaty.
Okay, thank you so much, Timur. So now it's time for your questions, dear participants. So raise your hand, please, to show you are willing to ask the question. Please name a speaker you are addressing your question, or we will give the floor to speaker who is ready to answer. So I don't see for a while raised hand. I see. Yes, please, Marcel Mock, your question.
Yes, I understand that if we have time, perhaps can you talk, or should we answer them here, the questions? Marcel?
Marcel?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we hear you.
I posted one question already about the airline company, Ukrainian airline. I wondered, this airline company is partly owned by a foreign company, namely Austrian Airlines. What about the remaining 51% of that company? Will that part of the privatization?
Dmitry, I think it's a question for you. I think that it has been privatized already in the past.
Yeah, no, we don't have in the state property fund these shares for privatization. Maybe the short answer is not.
Yeah, so it was meaning it was not state-owned company, you mean? Yeah. Okay, maybe you ask a question, I mean written question which is not answered. You can ask by voice. Please raise your hand.
Perhaps, let me do it. Perhaps I will answer the question of Katerina Kucherenko.
Yes, please, Timur.
I see the question of Katerina Kucherenko. Good afternoon, my name is Katerina Kucherenko and I am with APG Asset Management. Two questions. What exact steps are being taken to ensure the rights of property owners from fictitious claims against real property? What protection is in place Ukrainian government is put in place to prevent asset stripping through privatization, such as patents, proprietary technology design, etc.? First point is real estate, and second is IP rights. So, I mean, based on our practice, it's very important that the investment, I have mentioned already a couple of times, that the investment initially structured in a way that the investment is covered by the double investment protection treaty. Why I'm emphasizing this? Because sometimes, for some reasons, normally tax reasons, the investment vehicle is used which doesn't have a valid double investment protection treaty between Ukraine and respective investment country of investor, origin of investor, or the double investment protection treaty is not very much favorable. So therefore, this is what we really recommend, because this tool, double investment protection, has been really very, very useful to protect, firstly. Secondly, hire proper lawyers at the very outset of transaction so that they properly structure your deal and help you to properly record the title to the property, etc. Again, perhaps it sounds like an advertisement, but I've seen a number of very interesting transactions when a major company, they buy asset in Ukraine without involving proper lawyers or using the lawyers of the opposite party. I don't comment on this. And in fact, the homework is not done properly. So then when we come to this situation, we see that at the very initial point, the property was not acquired according to the law. The due diligence was not done properly. Some skeletons in the closet were not found. So which means that the transaction is being attacked and the title to the property is being attacked by law enforcement agencies or by other unfriendly parties. So therefore, do your homework, register your title, properly, ensure that you have a professional law firm, and take care of the proper transaction structure from the point of view of investment protection agreement between Ukraine and the country of origin investor. And what is also important, what is advisable, by the way, if you think that there are potential issues with your property, we recommend to register an intra-group mortgage, for instance. So when your mother company or headquarter provides a facility to Ukraine, and as a security of this facility, a mortgage against this property, Ukrainian property, is being recorded. It helps you a lot to feel much more safer and to safeguard your property against illegal, illicit actions of your counterparties. With regard to the IP, it's actually more or less the same, because IP is also the same asset which you should protect as real property. And if you do your due diligence when you buy the asset, you have to clearly put the questions: what exactly are you buying? Are you buying the bricks and mortar? You're buying technologies, and if you are buying technologies, you have to check it. Because in my practice, I had a situation when the client, they bought a property. The asset, the company, the shares of the company, thinking that they have also inherited the IP rights, but in fact, the IP rights were not bought, because the IP rights, they remained with the major state institute, which has just provided the license to the target. So that means that the target was just using these IP rights based on the license agreement. So it's actually, again, the matter of proper due diligence. And if you do it properly, you can find it out. I hope I have answered your questions.
Yeah, Timur, thank you so much for your complete answer. Yeah. We also have received more written questions. I would like to read them. I believe it will be interesting to everybody to hear the answers. And please be more active, raise your hand. So question is, how long is the timeline of buying state-owned company? How long does it take? How quick I can buy? As a question from Alexander Semenets. I think this is a question for Dmitry.
Quick question.
How long it will take to buy state-owned company in Ukraine?
So the process of preparation, the due diligence, the audits of small privatization, plus exposure and proposal to the market, then the auction takes like 4 to 6 months. It's like small privatization. After the auction, when there is a winner, it is 1 month to check the shareholder structure, as Timur Bondarev correctly explained, that there should not be any Russian investors, and the shareholder structure should be transparent. Then there is another 1 month to pay the amount following the price that was established on the auction. So it's like average 6 months if you talk about the company, but the majority of this time takes preparation to disclose this information. So this is what we are trying to do here in the fund, having very limited resources, asking for support for international donors to give more information for the investors, what's on sale, what are the defects of the asset, what are the positive sides, that everybody should know everything. it needs some efforts. With regard to the big privatization, there is a timing between 9 and 11 months, starting from selection of consortium of advisors, then approval of the government of this advisor, then in that due diligence of the big company, like 3-4 months, then approval of starting price and post-privatization conditions, then marketing, and then auction and closure. So this is approximate timing.
Okay, Dmitry, thank you for extended answer. And I will read one more question. I think this question maybe to Franz Lavoy or to people who already doing business with Ukraine. So question is, are there specific cultural differences that need to be taken into account when acquiring state-owned companies or afterwards running it? Who is ready to answer?
Should I try to answer, Irina? Franz Lavoy here.
Yes, of course, Franz.
We bought a partnership more than 25 years ago in Ukraine. And we had invested in many different countries, and Ukraine for us was a first. And you're asking about the cultural differences. There are almost always cultural differences. And we believe to overcome those cultural differences is best to do that through a reliable partner. And we always spend a lot of time and effort on finding a good partner. You can find a good lawyer, but then it's already too late because you're normally in a dispute and you need a lawyer. With a partner, you can overcome many obstacles that you find through cultural differences. And a good partner will help you to avoid many missteps. I have met in my life too many people that believe that after 1 or 2 visits, you can find the ideal partner. In my experience, to find a reliable, good partner takes time. And I would advise everybody to invest that time before you make the investment in finding a partner that you can trust and rely on in difficult times. Because there are always going to be obstacles that you did not meet in your own country, but you meet them in Ukraine or in any other country where you invest. And then you have the problem in not understanding the culture. And through your partner, you are much closer to the culture of the country, and therefore you can avoid many of the mistakes.
Yeah, wonderful answer. Thank you, Franz. Thank you so much. I see more and more questions written, but why you don't raise your hand? Please, participants, Peter Outward, Jan Peters, raise your hand and ask the question. Yeah, Peter, I see you. Please, ask your question.
You can hear me now?
Yes, please.
So my question is, I think for Dmitry, and I'm just curious about Ukraine's space industries. I know the sector is 90% state-owned, but there's been a new state space program announced to move these companies to corporatization and to be more modern companies. And on the outside, I know that there's an abundance of capital looking to invest in space right now. $4.5 billion was invested last year, and it's starting to migrate from US companies to Europe, where people are making the investments. So anyway, I've given you my question. I'm curious to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Thank you. Good question indeed. I also believe that the corporatization of the space, the companies will be held. I know that there was a law adopted, and If there is a specific interest with regard, I can put you in through with the head of the Committee of Parliament on the Economic Policy, Dmitro Nataluha, who is actually pushing this topic forward. For the moment, there is no practical cases that we can put on sale the part of the shares or something, but there is a political will and tendency to demonopolize it, as it was done with the spirit industry.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other question? I don't see.
Irina, I see here the question from
Yeah.
from Admiral Solandor with regard to the land again. Let me answer it in the meanwhile. Again, the question about buying land. Can Netherlands farmers buy land in Ukraine, and what are the restrictions? Netherlands farmers are more willing to buy land than real estate in Ukraine. So this is a very, very timely question, because actually now we are having a big discussion in this regard, because just earlier this year, the law was adopted, which would allow foreigners in some time to own the agricultural land. Because in Ukraine, there is so-called moratorium for agricultural land, which means that the agricultural land cannot change the hands, and the foreigners cannot allow the land. They can only long-term lease it, which actually has been working very well in practice. And we've been advising on major projects when major domestic and global companies, they have been leasing land in Ukraine for agricultural purposes, and actually they succeeded to raise capital. So it really works very well if you do a proper legal structure. So this is the long answer. So that means that actually short answer, unfortunately, no opportunity to buy the land for foreigner, but there is a chance to have a long-term lease, which can used very widely and securely in your agricultural business. But non-agricultural land can be bought by foreigners.
Yeah, okay, Timur, thank you so much. Yeah, I see a raised hand. Jan Peters, please ask your question.
Good afternoon. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question about employees. I saw in one of the presentations that, there was something about the protection of employees. I can imagine when you take over a state-owned company, you really would like to streamline that company and maybe do a reorganization and so on. So my question is, are there special restrictions with regards to personnel if you take over a state-owned company?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's really interesting question. Who can take this question?
Yeah, let me briefly answer. Perhaps Dmitry will then comment on this. Again, it's illegal stuff. So, but just by default, so after you buy the company, within the 6 months, you cannot terminate the employees. But in the so-called large privatization projects, special conditions can be provided that for this particular asset, for instance, for some longer period of time, no redundancies can be made. This is an opportunity, but it doesn't mean that it will work in each and every project. So subject to respective privatization, and the State Property Fund of Ukraine would then consider obviously the suggestions of respective investors and specifics and peculiarities of respective privatization process. And obviously there are also trade unions which also take active part in this process. Dmitry, can you perhaps comment on this also?
Classically, there are like two post-privatization conditions. One is social, can you fire, cannot, when, why, how much, etc. And second one is ecological post-privatization conditions. With regard to the small privatization, we are trying not to write the business plan for the future owner. We are trying to be more liberal, and we are putting on the very small and very necessary post-privatization conditions, I believe, in the market. And I believe that the state should establish the rules, generally be a judge on the field. And today the state is trying to be the football player and the judge on the football field at the same time. So we need strong institutions that would regulate anti-monopoly, of course, judicial system, fair taxes, and only few companies should stay to be the state-owned, like the national monopolies and the companies that really have exclusive social functions that are part of the state functions. So that's why State Property Fund, we are not the policy makers. We are executing the policies. But within our function, we are not trying to put a lot of post-privatization conditions. With regard with the cases of big privatization, then there are professional advisors. Normally, these are investment banks and Big Four who are proposing this post-privatization conditions, and we are submitting it as a state property fund to the government to be approved. So we are trying to be more liberal and more open, but ecological and social are to be considered in the course of privatization.
Okay, thank you for
Okay,
complete
thank you.
answer. Yeah, and I see next question from Karel Burger-Duren. Karel, you can ask your question. Karel, your microphone switch on. You can ask.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
And can you see me also or not?
No, unfortunately not.
No problem. Now, I was wondering, is the present list of companies that are up for privatization, is that the final list? Or will this list, will it be updated in the future for new companies that are maybe up for privatization? That's my question.
Yes, this is a question for me probably. So again, the policy, which companies to be privatized, which not to be privatized, formulated on the level of parliament. And now there is a list of the companies that government submitted to parliament to be approved that are not subject for privatization. The rest could be subject for privatization, but they are managed by 96 state-owned companies, state-owned bodies like ministries, agencies, etc. So we are, as a state property fund, we are getting for privatization only if and when it's been decided by the government that this company or this company should be transferred to the state property fund, and we are doing our job. So that's why I am sending my request to the business communities. Please help us to show the political level that there is an interest, saying this should be the letters with no specific details, saying that, dear, I don't know, government officials, state property fund, we are, as the company X, would like to consider investment in the privatization of agricultural or whatever. Show your interest, because I am fighting with the government and with the parliament specifically now. When the politicians are saying, no, there is no interest, there is no money, nobody will come, because there is the biggest corruption in the state-owned company when they are improperly managed. This corruption, the money are reinvested in the next political elections, and then the new directors of the state-owned companies are being appointed. During the 29 years of independence, there was a privatization, so-called oligarch privatization in the years 2000, and now we have some political will, but we need to support it with the pressure, with the civilized request from the business. That's why, answering your question, yes, there will be more companies delivered to the privatization, but we need the voice of the business, because it's not me and IMF are asking for privatization. I am now meeting business communities association, together with Timur Bondarev, we need to raise the voice of the business addressed to the politicians, saying, guys, there is a problem in the country. You need investments. We have some liquidity. We can invest. Please give your investment menu. Don't keep it under the table.
Okay, Dmitry, thank you so much, but don't scare participants about corruption.
In the meantime, maybe I can also add some information with respect to, this is Lana speaking.
Yes, Lana?
Yeah, I just want to add some information about the cultural aspects and also some compliance aspects of the state-owned companies, and saying that it's not so bad like somebody may think, actually, because now quite a lot of state-owned companies are undergoing corporatization stage, so to say. They are having supervisory bodies and also they are building up the compliance systems. That's what I can say, because I'm an executive board member of the Ukrainian Network of Integrity and Compliance, which has been formed in Ukraine by EBRD and OECD and Business Ombudsman. And we have a number of agreements made with the state-owned companies who always have a big desire to join the network and to develop their compliance systems. They do have compliance officers in their structures, and they are also undergoing some anti-corruption compliance programs with the help of partly with the help of this organization. So that's what I can see, so to say, as a member of this organization, that's actually quite a lot of state-owned companies are now look like business structures, or even want to look as business structures, and they develop their attitude and the way how they do business.
Yeah, Lana, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time and we need to finalize our meeting. I don't see any raised hand, but I have the last written question, which is still not answered. So maybe it will be the last question. And I think this question to someone who is doing business in Ukraine or who knows Ukrainians very well. So the question is, how to change culture from state-owned employees with, let's say, Soviet type of mentality to business approach after buying such kind of companies, or maybe in general, how to do business in Ukraine with people who still have that Soviet mentality, mostly in state-owned company before. Who can answer this last question? Franz, maybe you? How it is doing business with Ukraine?
Okay. The question is, how do you change mentality and maybe also the recent history of employees because they worked in a different culture? To be perfectly honest, we have quite a bit of experience in the past, as I said, 25 years, and we are amazed how quickly people adopted the new attitude to work. It has a lot to do, of course, with incentives or incentives, money, but also education and example. And I think the example by the senior management is very important. Incentives also financially to show that there is an extra reward for more and better work performance. I think these things were adopted very, very quickly. Before, of course, we didn't communicate so much with the outside world, maybe from the Ukraine and other countries. But now people are very open. They travel and they understand the cultural differences, and they
very quickly changed. We certainly had no complaints.
Franz, I have one more question to you from Dmitry Sirotsky. Let me switch his camera. Dmitry, please ask your question. Dmitry, you can ask. Your microphone is switched on. Dmitry, do you hear me? Oh, sorry. Maybe he already left. So, my proposal to finalize with it. Dear guests, thank you so much for impressive speeches, thought-provoking questions, and comprehensive answers. Thank you really for active communication. I appreciate your contribution and time spent for the event. Let's keep in touch, stay healthy, and goodbye for the moment. Thank you so much for everyone.
Irina, Dmitro is willing to say something.
Yeah?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for the initiative, for the organization, for the participation. I see like 70 people were around 70 people were taking part in this event. I really asking you, please send us letters. We will show them to the members of parliament saying, guys, investors are ready to invest. Let's keep pushing the privatization forward. We are in the State Property Fund fighting with oligarchs, with bureaucracy, with members of parliament. Just now, one of the members of parliament registered the document that they want to dismiss me because I know why. But we doing this for business. We know that the result will be in a few years. I spent like talking with Balcerovich, Václav Gavel, a lot of people who made transformation. This will not be happening today and tomorrow. But we have to keep this political support further. It's only possible if the business will raise its voice. Send me the letter. We would like to consider anything to invest. And I will bring all these letters to the parliament. We will get more and more really good assets for the privatization. President is supporting personally. Prime Minister is supporting personally. I'm meeting President once in 3 weeks regularly, but they are also alone. We need the voice of the business for the parliamentarians. Thank you very much for today's meeting. I need your support, and we are doing everything what we can do in our place. Changing completely the process of privatization, making accessibility to transparency, investment relation office. Let's do it together. Ukraine deserved it. And the Kingdom of Netherlands is a very good friend of Ukraine for many, many years. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Dmitry, thank you for your words. Maybe anyone else want to say last sentence to finalize our meeting?
Thank you, Irina. Thank you for your kind efforts. Well done, very well done. Very important.
Thank you, Timur.
Thank you, Irina.
And welcome to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Thank you all, also from ODU. I think this was a very, very inspiring activity, and a special thanks to you, Irina, for doing this for us.
Thank you.
I also join thanking you for the organization, and I reiterate our proposal to hold the next live event, hopefully in Amsterdam, in the Industrial Club, as it was planned initially. And we would like to see Mr. Sinichenko there and all the participants. Thank you.
Emails already in the chat, on the website, and emails we've sent. You can find in our website, but I will also send it to Irina and His Excellency Ambassador Vladimir Chensov. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Dmitry.
Sorry.
Yeah, Helen, we don't hear you. Helen.
Okay, on behalf of the Royal Industriële Grote Club, I would like to stress that we will do an effort to organize the event next year live, as Mr. Chensov also proposed. Yes, and thank you very much for this nice event organized digitally.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. It's true. First time we would like to do this event on March this year in Amsterdam in the Industrial Club by invitation from Helen. So it's live. So first of all,
Yes.
let's stay healthy and next meeting to have live.
Indeed.
Thank you for
Okay.
it.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.